Hi, part three, moving into morality and ethics, our next module, Monday, July the 15th. Now, this is a heavy duty one. I know this one was too, with scripture. It's a lot to learn, takes our whole life to learn this, but this is our owner's manual. But morality and ethics takes us into, now how do we live this? The church has created its teachings around, what does God want from us and how do we become this Catholic Church, right? And it's tough because a lot of people leave the church because of its teachings. But let me tell you, if you really start to read and understand why the church teaches what it teaches, you can still disagree, but it doesn't have to push you out, right? Like, the church has made so many mistakes, right? It's a human institution. Any human institution, whether it's a family, a governing body, a council of any type, there's going to be disagreement, there's going to be different points of views, there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be people who do dishonest and illegal things. It's human nature. No one can really run away from this. We just need to know how to deal with this. So I'm not apologizing for the church, but we as a church are journeying through our brokenness and our mistakes. And and that's going to happen, has happened throughout history, and it's going to continue, unfortunately. But hopefully we're learning, and we're going to do this less and less as we go on. But what the church teaches really is life-giving. And as we become more educated, you think back to pre-Vatican II, people weren't thinking for themselves in terms of our faith. We weren't reading the Bible. But since Vatican II, we've been invited to think and discern and debate and discuss and read. So are you reading? Or are you getting your information from another source that has a bias, like the media? People have a really hard time with the Catholic Church, and they're finding everything in it to make it look bad and to make it look worse. And they're giving their perspective on it, their secular observations on it. But do we enter it into our teachings as people of faith who know our story, who we belong to this story? That makes a difference. And as Catholic educators, how are you disseminating this information about the Catholic Church? Do you come into your classroom with an attitude like, the church? You can't do that. And it's interesting, we have a personal faith life and we have a professional faith life, and the two have to come together. So if in your own life you have made decisions that go against the church teachings, you have to deal with that. You have to reconcile with that. You have to figure that out. But when you step into the classroom, you're not CNN giving your bias, right? You have to come in there because you have signed a contract, right, pretty much, to be the church and to teach our students about the church, right? So do you know what the church teaches? That's question number one. Okay? So if you don't, try to get educated, try to understand, and try to find yourself within church teachings. What is it that you don't agree with, and why do you not agree with? But also try to understand why the church is teaching that. Maybe you might find yourself in that context of why it's teaching, and surprise yourself. I actually think what the church teaches is pretty good, spot on, right? And so when I present it to my students, they need to know. They need a different voice. They need a different message. They're getting the gospel of secularity, which is really a culture of death. And I hate to sound gloom and doom, but that's what it does. Everything about our secular culture leads to a death in self-image, a death in self-respect, Our students are sexing themselves. They're looking for love. They're dying for love. But they're oh my gosh, they're so undignified what they're doing in their quest for love, or trying to fill that hole. And then all the side effects of that, right? St. John Paul II talked about creating a culture of life. And that's what the church really does offer if you sift through everything, right? So be open to it, okay? So the church starts teaching from the platform of dignity of human life. Everything starts from there. Even if it derails down the road somewhere, it starts with dignity of human life. And that's how we have to approach everything. God gave us the gift of free will. We talked about that with in the part about suffering with Kushner and Job, right? And with that gift of free will, you know, I talked about it in my email to you guys, you know, we take some of that power from God in a sense. God shares that power because God made us co-creators with God. So God is there for us. God is waiting for us to call God into our lives. You know, if we don't talk to God, how's God going to come in, right? You know, how does, you know, does God answer our prayers? Well, hopefully you are praying, you know, because God is a relationship. And if we're not talking to God, if we're not communicating, how are we going to feel God's presence, first of all? So prayer is important, right? But also to understand that God answers the prayers the way God thinks we need those prayers answered. And it's usually through strength and courage and people coming into our lives and supporting us. And God feels our pain and God suffers with us. But God doesn't create our suffering. It's part of that gift of being able to think for ourselves and to grow and to not be robots led by God as puppets. God took away the strings and said, you know, I'm giving you the gift of free will. Live, you know, create, find yourself, find your gifts. I'm giving you gifts, but just find them, right? And if you think about it that way, that's a pretty amazing gift. And so we're in relationship with God as co-creators, okay? So when you are looking at issues of morality and ethics, we're going to root this in sexual ethics because this is, you know, even if it wasn't part of the curriculum, we need to understand the church's teachings in the context of sexual ethics because it's number one in terms of the issues that we're dealing with our students and ourselves. I remember when I taught at OISE, I remember the young teachers coming into my class and a lot of them were a little apprehensive. They grew up in a Catholic church, they went to Mass, they stopped going to Mass because they were at university, you know, and just typical, you know, young adult life takes you away from the church, right? And then, you know, they're kind of coming back thinking, can I teach in a Catholic church? Am I worthy? You know, a lot of them are dealing with their own decisions they made about their own issues of sexuality, feeling a little guilty. Am I in, you know, union with the church? Can I do this, right? And so as teachers, you have to do that. You have to reconcile with where you're at. But don't bring it into the classroom. It's about teaching what the church teaches. They need to hear the church's message. Because the secular world is saying, have sex, have lots of it. Just give yourself away. It's awesome. Have fun. Don't be a party pooper. But what are the effects of that, right? If you do the research, the statistics are out there. The earlier, people start having sex, there's an impact as they grow. You know, never mind, you know, disease and all the things that can happen if you abuse your body through you know, undignified sexuality, right? It's like everything else. If we do things the wrong way, we suffer for it, right? We eat too much, if we smoke too much, if we drink too much, all the things we love to do, if we watch too much TV, right? It's detrimental to our growth, our development, and it brings us down and it creates a culture of death. And we need to create this culture of life. So that being said, what does the church teach? Well, the church teaches that, you know, to put our sexuality in a healthy place, the church's teachings put it in the context of marriage. Why? It makes sense, right? Because, you know, especially when these teachings were first created, we got married a lot earlier in life. Like, we were designed to have babies earlier in life, right? So this is if you think about how we're created, the context in which we live is very artificial, right? Because as soon as we hit puberty, you look at the story of Mary, right? She was about 13 when she was pregnant, right? That was normal. But at 13, 14, kids are in school at a desk and still looking at another 10, maybe 20 years before they finish school, before they get settled, before they find a partner to get married with and to start. Like, it's really been expanded this period of time, right? So what are we asking children to do? We're asking them to sit in a class and not be affected by their hormones. And some are affected more, some affected less. Some just go crazy, like it's just they're bursting, right? And what are those hormones telling them to do? They're telling them to procreate, right? That's the natural thing the body is telling them. This is how God designed us, right? But hold on a second, God, didn't you know down the road we were going to, well, you know, this is the challenge for humanity now. We can't just act upon it, but we are. And they're starting younger and younger. As young as kindergarten. I'm not saying they're having sex at kindergarten, but they're starting to come in with a sexual kind of image. They're modeling themselves against their heroes, which are, you know, in the media, and they're dressing sexy and they're acting. They're thinking they have to act this way, but hold on a second, their little bodies don't suit these clothes that they're wearing, and their actions are so not what a like. Do you get what I mean? Okay, so it's we're kind of, you know, oh my gosh, what are we doing with our sexuality? Where is it supposed to be? So we have to figure that one out. But as we're figuring it out, you know, where do we fit in with the church and marriage? So a lot of people are saying, wow, well, you know, I've had sex before marriage, so am I a sinner? Am I allowed to be part of the church? And this is where, you know, the formation of conscience, you learned this earlier in part 1 and part 2, right? So, you know, as a person in the Catholic Church, if you're older, you know, you've just finished all your studies, you've just met the person, you're in your 30s or late 20s or even in your 40s, right? And it's like, wow, should I be a virgin? Should I not have had sex? Well, you know, again, this, you know, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So you have to reconcile of when you made those decisions, and hopefully when you've had sex, it was for the right decisions. It might have, the outcome might not have lasted, that relationship might have not been long term, but hopefully you went into it with love and dignity, right? And when you do find the person that you love, that you can, you know, come together in a way that's dignified in terms of your sexuality, because chastity also means, it doesn't mean not to have sex, but to be chaste. It means married couples need to be chaste as well. So if you don't understand these terms in terms of what the church teaches, you got to go back and revisit them or ask me questions, right? So dignity of human life. And there's a consistent ethic of life from the cradle to the grave. This is what the church bases its teachings on, right? So when we're in the classroom with our students, we're not going in there and, you know, telling them what we've done with our moral issues in terms of our sex life. That's not on the table. Nor should it be implied. You shouldn't be coming into your classroom and your kids know that you're not married and just like, oh, that wonderful weekend you just had, you and your partner went away for the weekend. Well, what are you applying? Right? That kind of stuff you're not talking about with your kids. You're not hanging out. You're not best friends. Right? You're their teacher. They need adults in their lives. Enough of them have parents that are bringing, you know, a different partner into their house every other weekend, and kids don't know whether someone's coming or going out of their lives, and they're hearing what's going on. They're exposed to all this stuff and they're confused, right? So stop the confusion for them. Be an adult, be a teacher, be a responsible adult that's representing the church. Because you may be the only church they're getting. Because their parents may not be taking them to church, or they might have stopped going to church. So how are you presenting church to them? How are you presenting church's teachings? And are you welcoming them back and forgiving them when they're feeling guilty about things? We need to be open and allow our students to come to us and not to be, you know, to be carrying things, right? I just love when we go on the Salesian retreat, and it's an awesome retreat for students, and part of the retreat is going to confession, and most of these kids don't go to confession since their first confession. Anyways, I can't get into the long version of this, but when kids do come out of that, they're just like on top of the world. They're like, wow, what an experience. I feel so much better. They come out, they're like bright, they're on fire, they're just like, they went to confession. And that's what the sacraments are designed for. We have a sacramental identity, and those sacraments are there for a reason, to help us when we fail, to help us when we fall, to build us back up, not push us down. That's what our sacramental life of the church is. No one's perfect in any capacity, right? So when we teach our kids What are we teaching them? Is it life-giving? How are we inviting them into the church and to use the church's teaching to lift them up? Because we can do that with the church's teachings of sexuality, because they're meant to be put in a place of love. So the church is looking at that. We are co-creators with God. God gave us this superpower of creating more human life. God created and then just said, you take it from here. Go ahead. Keep going. We're partners in this. So what are we doing with that power, right? Are we giving life or are we taking life away? Starting with the people that are involved in the sexual act and then what can be produced from that. Because whether you're 13, 23, 33, 43, 53, if you can produce a life when you have sex, whether it's with your marriage partner or whoever you're having sex with, you have to ask yourself, am I ready at this time to create life and take care of that life and make decisions for that life? Right? So that is what we're, dealing with. So when the church put the church's teachings in terms of premarital sex to the context of marriage, there's a reason for it. Because at marriage, you're ready to be responsible, more or less. Not everyone is, but we have to find a place, right? You're done with your partying, more or less. Starting to save money, create a safe space. The house, the security, and so let's bring a life into that with dignity. So that's why it's all put into the church's teachings on marriage. Because hopefully by the time you get married, you're at that point. And we know that's not always the case, but there's a better shot of that child that's going to be created to be in a better environment if two people that have that child are married, are considering, financial stability, are creating that home, you know what I mean? Okay? So that's what we're talking about, the dignity of human life and the responsibility that we have. And that's why it's in that in the concept of marriage, right? But I'm just going to remind you what the Catechism teaches, and just in terms of your informed conscience. It says man has the right to act in conscience and in freedom so as personally to make moral decisions. He must not be forced to act contrary to his conscience. Remember that process of search, forming your conscience, that you have to do all the, the reading, the reflecting, and the talking, and knowing what the church teaches, right? Nor must he be prevented from acting according to his conscience, especially in religious matters. Okay, so that's in the Catechism 1782. So we're also dealing with, if we're talking about sexuality, because this is going to go on, I think this is going to go on for hours, we have to address the LGBTQ plus community. And before I left chaplaincy a couple of years ago, that really has taken on a whole different life from when I started teaching. Now we're dealing with trans issues. More and more kids are coming out at an earlier age. This actually warrants its own video, I'm going to tell you. What I might do is create another video in a couple of days, and if you can send me your questions, then I can incorporate that into the video as well, because this will actually go on too long, because that is really something that, even though it's not new, it's new in the sense of what's going on with that. I had kids in my Open Arms group, which is our group for LGBTQ support, and the whole issue that they're dealing with in terms of wanting to change their bodies, and so wow, we've just taken it up another notch. That the whole issue of washrooms and everything, so we can go on and on and on. But I will do a second video for morality and ethics about halfway this week, and I will address that and any other issues that you might have, because I know there was also a question about can people that don't get married in the Catholic Church, can they be in communion with the Church and receive Eucharist? Okay, so in canon law it says no, but the Pope did put out an encyclical recently, not too long ago, about married people, divorce, annulments, and all that. And I want to see how the Church is dealing with that. So I need to talk to some people that are actually some of my clerical friends to see how that is being received. But there's so much information out there in terms of, I've got a book on marriage, divorce, and nullity. The Church and human sexuality, the unhealed wound. The Church is, obviously trying to deal with this sexual authenticity, intimate reflection on homosexuality and the church, right? Remember when the Pope said, "Who am I to judge?" Theology of the Body. I think a lot of you guys are familiar with Christopher West and Pope John Paul II looking at the body in a healthier way. The Sexual Believer, Uncommon Reflections on Sexual Morality for the Catholic in the Third Millennium. Okay, so I like this one. Holy Sex. Catholic Guide to Toe-Curling, Mind-Blowing, Infallible Loving. Right? So yeah, the church enters the bedroom, guys. Well, not in that way, but you know what I mean. Like we think, but we're decision makers, and it's in the bedroom that we use that gift of being co-creators with God the most. Yeah, God's design for us is very, very interesting. But let's pray, because this will be continued. And the reading of the day, the reading of the day for Monday, July the 15th, is not an easy one. I don't like that. I usually open up the reading and I think, this is easy, I can talk about it, right? And I'm actually recording this on Sunday, and today's reading is fabulous. It's the Good Samaritan. I could do that one in my sleep. That's so easy. But we're starting ethics on Monday, July the 15th, so I'm going to be true to what I do, and I do the reading of the day. And I actually had to go to my commentary. I had to go to the mother of commentaries, Jerome, to kind of get some insight. And based on the markings of my commentary, I've been there before for this reading. So it's interesting. I already had a tab in there. So I find this one a little challenging. So let's try to unpack it for us, the way this reading should maybe be speaking to us today as teachers, taking a summer course and starting ethics and morality. Let's begin. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen, and peace be with you. And let us continue to hold each other in prayer, and the needs of our community, and the needs of this world, and the needs of our church, who also needs healing. And this gospel is taken from Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, right? And we're disciples, so Jesus is speaking to us too, right? Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. Oh, just as I read that, I thought, not this one, right? Because Jesus is the Prince of Peace, right? He comes to bring peace, but he says, do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. Hold on a second. What's this weapon thing? Well, I thought we were against weapons, and hold on. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Well, that makes sense. Hold on. Just joking. And one's foes will be members of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. But isn't that one of the commandments? Hold on a second, okay? And whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake find it. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. Now when Jesus had finished instructing his 12 disciples, he went on from there to teach and proclaim his message in their cities. The gospel of the Lord. All right, so this is the complex one. What's he doing there is calling us to radical discipleship. And that's why he's almost giving us opposing images, right? From peace to not bringing peace, to, we should take up arms, to here's the sword, to honoring and loving your mother and father, but don't love them as much as loving me. So it's just kind of like, wait a second, is this the, the contrary uh, gospel? Like, what's Jesus doing here? What is, the community of Matthew trying to tell us, right? So, so it's interesting because it kind of wakes us up in a sense, and at that time, they really believed that Jesus was coming again, that they had to, create this culture of discipleship. Let's work for the kingdom now. And even St. Paul, was the same. I just love, Paul was on fire, and he's like, leave everything, right? And just let's work towards this. This is important. Right? I love it when Father Richard Sparks, he's a moral theologian, came to talk to us at the year of St. Paul. And he just even in terms of sexuality, he said, what? Like, leave everything behind, even forget about sex. But if you're horny, get married. That was Father Richard's words. But it just kind of made me laugh because, because even in Jerome's biblical commentary, he makes reference to celibacy. So that whole concept of really focusing, let's leave everything behind, things that are important to us, things that we're passionate about, our family, our children, our sexuality, put it aside. Radical discipleship. Let's work towards the kingdom. Okay? So that's what this really is all about. And so as Catholic teachers, as lay people in the 21st century, what does radical discipleship mean for us? Even that reference to even a cup of water, you will be blessed. But what if you set up a whole water system for a community? What if people who had to walk miles for water all of a sudden have access to water? Wow, there's radical discipleship. So when we're talking about ethics and morality in this unit, right? How are we going to be radical in our discipleship? How are we going to take it up a notch? How are we going to make this important? How are we going to prioritize our work for the kingdom? And I think that's the message for us today, especially on this day that we start learning about ethics and morality. It's a lifestyle. Christianity is a lifestyle. It's not just a religion. If we just make it a religion, it's an hour on Sunday if we're lucky, and those few prayers we say during the week. But if we make Christianity into a lifestyle 24/7, it's radical. We live it, we breathe it, we think it, it's our worldview. Everything about us becomes a mission for discipleship. Our relationships, how we see the world, and how we help the world. We're building God's kingdom with the gifts that God has given us. I think that's what this reading is about. At least for us anyways. God bless. Have a wonderful day. Peace.